What's your most NSW family moment? My uncle cheated on my aunt with her brother's wife for a while about 17/18 years ago. Nobody outside of those 4 people know except me and my eldest cousin because my aunt got drunk one family reunion and told us. Everyone thinks the 2 families just hate each other for some petty reason. What makes it worse is my aunt has a child who is turning 18 who looks nothing like his dad but strikingly similar to my other uncle. Yet nobody has ever mentioned anything and we have never brought it up. One Thanksgiving, many years ago, my mom got the bright idea that before eating we would go around the table and everyone would share what they were thankful for. My dad told her repeatedly that he wasn't doing that and that was a bad idea, but she insisted. So we're sitting there at the table waiting to see what happens. My whole family was in attendance. Brother, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, and my grandmother. My dad volunteers to go first. And the look on my mom's face is one where she's trying to decide if she should be worried about what he's going to say, mixed with wondering if he just decided to play along. My dad says, "I'm thankful that I'm 50 years old and I can still get a rock hard erection." Half the table died laughing. Half the table was uncomfortable. My mom was peed, and my dad got exactly what he wanted and stopped that whole process in its tracks. Then it was dinner time. Went to tell my brother that a classmate of ours had passed away. He didn't answer when I knocked, so I assumed he was sleeping and opened the door. Wrong, he was jacking off with headphones on. I managed to leave and close the door without him knowing I was there. Now that classmate is forever linked in my mind to my brother jacking off. My mom came home one day to a giant pair of boobs flapping up and down in the computer screen with the volume on high. Coincidentally, my brother was the only one home that day. Was having a wank when my dad walked in. Shocked, I turned around. I was clothed, just had my dong out. He asked what I was doing. Startled, I said nothing. "Are you doing drugs?" That shocked me more than him finding me wanking. I told him no, and I said I was checking my balls for lumps. "Oh, okay then," and left. Nothing more said about it. Step 1. Breathe the drugs in through your dong. My mom gave me a kidney and during our recovery she really wanted to see me but the hospital wouldn't let her because she had complications from the surgery and was pretty out of it, but somehow she managed to slip out of her room and come find me. Mind you, I was on a completely opposite floor from her, so I DK how the frick she found me. But anyway, it was my first official day eating solid food, so I was pretty excited until she got there. While I was eating, here comes my mom into my room and for some reason she decided it was the perfect time to undress. I mean full frontal view of my mom bush and all, and she goes, "Michael, look at what they did to me. Look at these scars." Needless to say, I will never be able to eat Fruit Loops again and not be reminded of my mom's bush. I was having trouble with my radiator and had no toolbox, so I asked my dad if I could borrow his. He came over and said he'd fix it for me. I hadn't had time to clean up since he only lives 2 minutes away, so he started reading me my right about how messy my house is, etc. As he was lamenting over my clothes being on the floor, he opened my wardrobe to demonstrate how much room I had. In my wardrobe, there is a box. My dad looked down at the box. The box was open. The box was filled with fetish gear and adult toys. My dad closed the wardrobe and fixed my radiator. When I was 12-13, at a hotel room with my parents for a basketball tournament. Gold medal, thanks for asking. They fricked in the bed right next to mine. 10 minutes after lights out. I never mentioned it to anybody. Last weekend I was visiting NYC, and lo and behold we share a hotel room. They fricked again. No way, babe. Oh come on. He slept through it the last time we did at that basketball tournament. My grandma told my whole family at dinner that she had fricked on the beach once. When asked when, she replied, "When I was 76. At least she is still getting it at that age." Not me, but my cousin who has a bit of a drinking problem was staying at our grandparents' house for a local festival. She proceeds to get hammer drunk and walks home. Walks in the door, goes to the bathroom and gets naked and crawls into bed. The problem is that it wasn't in the room she was sleeping in. It was in my grandparents' room. She crawled in next to my grandfather naked. And he just let it happen. I was at my first real girlfriend's house when I was in high school. We would frick in the basement, finished basement, when her family was home to avoid any walk-ins. After I finished, it was common practice to tie the condom in a knot and avoid throwing it in the trash bin to avoid the mom finding it when she was cleaning. So I left it on top of the ping pong table thinking I could take it upstairs with me when we decided to leave. The ping pong table was right next to the couch. Well, I fricked up. Her father and little brother thought it was a good time to go downstairs and play ping pong. The brother gets to the table first, sees the used rubber, picks it up, the load of semen just dangling there, holds it out, turns to his father and says, "Dad, what is this?" The dad's face was of sheer terror as he screamed at his son to drop it, grabbed his wrist and stomped upstairs, all while not breaking eye contact with me. I guess that instilled a fear of birth control into the poor girl. She got knocked up in college by a man her dad's age. I was back in town to see my family and I met up with my dad and stepmom. They were out drinking with some of our closest family friends. Well, after about an hour or so they are getting pretty drunk and rowdy. I notice the women, including my stepmom, start getting real flirtatious with each other. Mind you, there are 5 couples including my parents at this gathering. I watch it continue and I have to admit I'm a little uncomfortable seeing all these people I grew up around being inappropriate in public and in general. After a while I finally said, "What the frick is going on here?" to my parents. My stepmom started laughing and replied drunkenly with, "To be honest, you're the only one in this room I haven't fricked." Needless to say, I left quickly after that. I was caught mid-wank by my sister's then boyfriend, who was living with us at the time. I covered things up quick enough, which was a good thing as I was wanking to a PMag I found under his bed. When I was around 13, I was in bed awake on the couch in our mobile home. Main bed went to my mother and 2 single beds in one room went to my sisters. My cousin and her fiance were staying with us that night on the only other bed, which was the table converted into a bed, in the sitting room kitchen room I was in. When they got home from being out on the town, I pretended to be asleep. I heard them start looking around for something and saying they couldn't find it, sounding very disappointed. I jokingly thought to myself, AWW, they're mad because they can't find a condom. 5 minutes later they found what they were looking for. 2 minutes later they were fricking about 3 feet away from me. At one point I got a dead arm and had to adjust myself. I gave them both a heart attack, but they still didn't know I was awake. There was a time when my family lived in a tiny apartment. We had 1 bedroom with a double-deck bed. My parents slept on the bottom bunk and my older sister and I slept at the top. Well, one night I wake up to the bed shaking and peeking below. I realized my parents were fricking. I was like maybe 8 or 9, so I wasn't really grossed out but just really confused. My sister slept through the entire thing, or so I've always thought. At our extended family's Christmas party one year when I was like 8 years old, my aunt wanted to show my family the video she took on their latest vacation. Except when they start watching the VHS, it suddenly cuts to a video that my 16-year-old cousin, her son, took of a bunch of girls flashing their boobs. Apparently he had a house party while his mom was on a work trip and accidentally taped over his family vacation. So here are like 20 family members watching my cousin's own personal Girls Gone Wild video. Needless to say, he was in trouble. My husband and I had to move in with his parents for about 3 months when we were having financial issues. As I have the very last bag in my hand ready to move to our new home, I sat the bag on the living room floor and went to the bathroom. When I came out, something was going off in the bag. I said, "It's probably our son's Thomas the Tank toy." My mom-in-law dives right in and pulls out my vibe and holds it up for like 30 seconds like she's the Statue of Liberty holding up her freaking torch. My father-in-law and brother-in-law were also right there in the room. Needless to say, they still bring it up, and Thomas the Train is now code for vibe in that family. Not my story. A friend of mine from high school. His whole family went to Colombia for Christmas vacation and he fell in love with a girl out there. They went out on a few dates and kissed and stuff but didn't hook up yet. Then one night, they were having a party at his family's house. Everyone was partying outside. So the two of them, 17 years old and a bad combo of drunk and frisky, snuck back into the house to hook up for the first time. They start going at it, then the whole family basically walks in on them, laughed their butts off and walked right back out. After being long distance all throughout college, They got married a few years ago and just had their first kid last year. When I was a kid, around 8 the PlayStation was in my parents' room and we usually went to that room to play Gran Turismo with my little brother. Once he got angry about something and threw his controller away, detaching it from the console, and it ended up landing on my parents' wardrobe. We were small, so we tried climbing on the thing to get to it and ended up making a lot of the stuff on there falling on us. I felt a soft object hitting my forehead. It looked like a really big dong. My brother took it from the ground wondering what that was. I took it from him and yes, that was definitely a dong. Innocent me back then thought it was supposed to go on a mannequin or something, because I had never seen a mannequin naked and figured mannequins had dongs too. For some reason I instinctively threw it back up the wardrobe, but my little bro had already dashed downstairs telling my parents we found something strange in their bedroom. So my parents dashed upstairs and asked me what it was. I told them we found something that looked like a plastic horse dong and threw it back up. Since then we've had the PlayStation in our room. Thought it would be a good idea to make breakfast for my dad and stepmom. Cooked it all, got it ready and brought the plates in and thought bringing it in unannounced would be a wonderful surprise. I was not greeted by smiles. Instead I was presented by an image that is forever burnt into my mind. My dad under the covers obviously plugging away with my stepmom's head hanging off the side of the bed with her eyes closed and showing me her face. I retreated quickly, but my brain went, well, better put that in permanent storage and make it one of the clearest memories possible. Don't worry, you won't be forgetting any detail at all. And this is why we knock. My uncle's new wife was meeting the family for the first time, and after a glass of wine she asks if she can be herself. Everyone said yes. Then she asked my then 71-year-old grandpa if he sits at home watching P and jacking off all day. Had a GF over. We did the nasty. I threw the used condom into the trash. Took her home, then came home to my mom and sister laughing their butts off. Turns out our dog ran up to my room, grabbed it out of the trash and was playing with it while I was gone, and they found it. I moved back home from college after my freshman year and had to share a room with my high school age brother for a while. I had to listen to him rub one out every single night before he went to sleep. That was a little uncomfortable. When I was really young I was playing PlayStation in my brother's room. He has this giant poster of some blonde model, half naked. Paused the game for a quick 5-minute wank. I finished up and just looked towards his bedroom door. My mum literally just walked away as I looked up. Never got mentioned ever. I was house sitting for my grandparents many moons ago, and I had to get a fresh sheet. When I lifted the first one, lo and behold, there was my grandmother's vibe. I kept that secret for years. When I eventually told my mom about it, her only reaction was, "Your grandfather is impotent." I was weirded out, but now I just laugh about it. When I was 18 I dated a girl. She lived about an hour away, so I would stay at her house overnight, but her parents wouldn't let us stay in the same room, so I slept in a guest bed in the basement. Being 18-year-olds we would be up very late and go to bed around 2 AM. Her dad was some kind of delivery driver and worked around 4. He came down to the basement every single morning before work and masturbated to pee on the desktop computer while I was sleeping 10 feet away. There was only a couch between us, so the first couple times I lifted my head to see what he was doing before I realized. You better believe I didn't keep it a secret from her. I'd quietly text from under the blanket, "Your dad's jerking it again," right next to me. Just showing dominance in his household. When I was a lot younger, I'm 29 now, my parents had some people over, including my one aunt and uncle who are incredibly straight-laced. Early on in the evening, in one of the family rooms, she put on a VHS tape to watch of a movie she remembered seeing back during a trip she took with my uncle years ago. Nothing was really happening with the get-together as of yet, since it was still really early in the evening, so some of us stuck around to see what movie it was before more people came. Within the first 5 minutes, there were more topless girls and nudity in it than your average Skinamax flick nowadays. My aunt is absolutely mortified at this point and says she doesn't remember any of this in the movie, while my mom, her sister, is laughing hysterically, grabs the remote from her and says she should keep it on just because what's going on is so ridiculous, and my aunt's reaction is just so funny. I think my mom's exact words were, "How the heck could you not remember any of this?" There's so many boobs on the screen I can't even see the plot. Everyone in the room is dying that she brought over what was essentially a softcore 80s sexploitation movie with a subplot of there being some skiing thrown in there sporadically. My dad walks in since he hears everyone laughing and he's just got the biggest WTF face on when he sees what's up, makes an about face back towards the kitchen, and pours himself a drink. I skipped school. I used to do it all the time because my dad worked 7 AM to 5 PM most days and was a single father. I was in my room as per norm and he came home early. Didn't want to get caught so stayed perfectly still. My bedroom's at the top of the stairs. The computer is right at the base of the stairs. Dad watches P for the next hour. I think he heard a squeak cause he stopped to holler up the stairs for me, but didn't budge, didn't move, didn't say anything. Just waited. 5 minutes pass. He's satisfied. Goes back to his business. Never told him. Never skipped school again. Stay in school, kids. My auntie rang my best mate, who was mowing her lawns during that time, and asked him to frick her. He declined. It's good because even though I don't see her often, she usually slips me $50. I figure it's her way of saying STFU. My wife and I made the very poor decision of playing Cards Against Humanity with my parents. I ended up having to explain to my dear mother what BKKK is. I had to. She would not let it go. She ended up winning the game. The morning after my wedding I bumped into my cousin in the hotel lobby and she was asking about one of my groomsmen. She wanted to know how we were related to him. I told her he was just a friend of mine. She looked disappointed by this, and at the time I had no idea why. She cheated on her new husband with him after the wedding reception, and she was bummed he wasn't her cousin or some crap. Because it's not cheating if it's family, duh. Found a picture of my dad wearing lingerie, not in an I enjoy wearing it at home by myself kind of way, but in a I was forced to buy my mates during a pee up kind of way. Hilarious with a hint of mental scarring because you. It was known for a long time that my grandpa had a child with his mistress. After he died, we found out he had yet another kid several years later. The min-frick part is that this second child is only 2 years older than me, meaning I have an aunt that I would have gone to high school with. Or an aunt who could have fricked. Back when I was in high school I worked with my girlfriend on weekends. After work, we'd go back to her house and usually had 2-ish hours before her parents came home. On some days we'd take a nap, other days we'd watch a movie or fool around, etc. One fateful Saturday, our nap session turned into fricking. As an aside, she was pretty loud especially when she thought no one was home. So, we get started and everything is coming along nicely when all of a sudden there's some aggressive banging on her bedroom door. Of course we freak out, get dressed, and open the door only to find that it was her sister's boyfriend messing with us. So, we shut the door, and get back to business in a much more aggressive manner than initially. Her moaning is now more like yelling and I'm humping with reckless abandon when again there's another round of banging on the door. This time we ignore it and keep going for another 10-ish seconds before we hear dad scream at us through the door. He drove me home in his police cruiser immediately after that. 45-ish minutes in silence with his shotgun in the back seat and a condom still on my super flaccid dong. When I was still in school, I came home with my GF at the time. We're upstairs in my room and she's giving me a BJ. Across the room, I see the door start to slowly, and ridiculously silently, open. In walks my father. Sees me. Sees her. Most awkward eye contact ever. In a panic, I do the only thing I could think of. I point him out the door. Just as quietly as he came in, he was gone again. And on that day, he gained my eternal respect. She still doesn't know. I was helping my, then, boyfriend's sister move into a new place, and the keys were at the new house, and someone needed to go get them. So my boyfriend and I drove over to get them. While we were there, we did a little exploring of the new empty house. We realized there was an attic, and opened the ceiling door to let the steps down. I climbed up first, and being in a skirt, gave my boyfriend a nice view. We ended up fricking right there on the attic ladder, and right in the middle we hear the door open. Boyfriend's name called out, a pause, and then the door shut. We sheepishly returned to the rest of the family at the old house. to find his sister trying not to laugh hysterically. She says their mother came over to try to find out what was taking so long. Upon her return, she just loudly exclaimed they were freaking. To this day it's our favorite phrase to exclaim. I was on a road trip with my parents and the family dog after my brother went to college, and we checked into a hotel room with 2 queen beds. My parents took one, the dog and I were in the other. My dad wanted to gross me out and said, "Now son, if you hear anything in the middle of the night, keep your eyes on that wall," and pointed behind me with one hand, putting his arm around my disgusted mom with the other. I put my arm around the dog and said okay, but I expect the same courtesy. My uncle is a pimp in Gambia. He's originally from England. My cousin once went to stay with him. Towards the end of his first night there he was told he had a present waiting for him in bed. Goes upstairs to find a young lady completely naked lay across the bed. Not sure how long she'd been waiting. Growing up, my brother and I used to share a room. Anyway, one night I get woken up by moaning and sounds of pain. I look over and my brother rolls out of bed clutching his stomach and runs out the room. Now imagine a chubby 9-year-old wearing nothing but loose boxers hobbling sprinting down the hall. I'm hit with this foul smell, and I look down and there is a trail of wet splattery poop everywhere. Brother finishes running, slams into the bathroom, and you can almost hear the sigh of relief, except there wasn't. Turns out when he went to relieve his crappy bowels, he had nothing left. Best part was that he didn't realize where the poop had gone until he walked out the bathroom to see his crappy legacy spread out behind him. Oh, and fun fact, we had extended family staying over that time, notably the hot cousin he was crushing on. So I met my eventual wife back in 2007, and the next summer, her grandparents moved to town. On the 4th of July, 2008, I did what I did every 4th back then, which was get a handle of Jameson, go to my friend's house, swim in his pool, get blackout drunk, and eat grilled hot dogs and hamburgers all day long. Well, at about 2 p.m, my girlfriend, eventual wife, shows up at the house and asks if I'm ready to go. Come to find out, she had already made plans to get off work early and go over to her grandparents' house to have food and for me to meet them for the first time, and I just forgot about it. At least that's what she tells me. I had already put away about a third of that handle, so I was pretty lit, but I gathered my wits and agreed to go. Well, when I got there, her grandfather greeted me with a shot of 149 proof whiskey and a Coors Light. I drank that and a lot more that day, so things went south pretty quick. At this point I'm going off of what I've been told, rather than what I remember, but sometime that afternoon, I decided that I needed to take a pee off the back porch, in broad daylight, in the suburbs. It was all I could do to stand up at that point, so of course I put my hand on something nearby so I could keep my balance. That thing just happened to be a grill that had been cooking crap for several hours. So my girlfriend's grandmother was closest to the door, and when she heard the commotion, she came outside to find me on the deck, with my dong out, peeing everywhere, holding my hand, screaming, "Why is this grill so goddamn hot?" That crazy bee told this story at my wedding. In hindsight, they were super cool about it, but that was a crazy way to meet my eventual wife's grandparents. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.